Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Bev, and I'm bringing you guys another trade recap on how I made $1,000 trading my EVAL today. So we ended the losing streak yet again. Hopefully, this time we can finally start inching our way towards some profits and finally passing this fucking alpha account. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and hop straight into the recap. So this is the trade that I ended up taking today. Before I go ahead and get into the entry model, I'm just going to go ahead and rewind it here over to market open. I did not take a trade over at market open, but I did take a trade in the PM session, which was where this trade was taken. So let me go ahead and just replay this over here. All right. So coming into the day, as far as any biases go or anything like that. So most people were bearish for today, just for the simple fact that we have all this bearish news with Iran, going to war, and all these possibilities about us, possibly going to war with all these countries and shit. So a lot of people are like, oh, you gotta short the market. We're gonna dump heavily. We're gonna dump heavily. Me personally, I don't like trading solely off of world events and things like that. I still like to go ahead and look at the chart and see what it is that it actually wants to do. So coming into today, let me go ahead and just delete this. All right, so coming into today, as you can see here, S&P 500, we come down, sweep out this previous daily low, which I believe was also a previous week low. Yeah, so we come out, sweep out previous day and previous weekly low, and we put in an SMT at that level with the NASDAQ, as NASDAQ never comes out and sweeps out that previous weekly low. So that right there is already a sign of reversal. And what else is a sign of reversal? The fact that we came into a discount of the range right here. So we came into a discount, swept that previous week low on ES, and NASDAQ failed to do so, causing that divergence in price. So if we go ahead and scale out here onto the 4-hour here, we see that we also created a new week opening gap on Sunday. So we ended up gapping down, forming this huge gap that needed to get filled. And then also, since we're coming from a discount, we're more than likely going to work our way up to equilibrium, if not something, that was in the premium of the range. And we had this unfilled 4-hour with relative equal highs above that serve as a strong draw on liquidity. So not only did we sweep out a bunch of sell side, we came into, discount the range and put in an SMT with the previous day and previous weekly low. We have this unfilled 4-hour above us with relative equal highs resting above it. So we have a good clear draw on liquidity. So right here, I ended up scaling onto the 1-hour to look at the daily profile. So with the daily profile, let me go ahead and mark this out because I did have this marked out coming into market open. So the daily profile, you can see here, there was that gap down. Asia comes up and then comes all the way back down. London ends up sweeping out that previous, on ES, London ends up sweeping out that previous weekly low. We put in that SMT and then boom, we end up displacing back up higher. We form this 1-hour fair value gap. Price comes into it, respects the equilibrium, which is just the halfway point of the gap, and then we start distributing to the upside, and we also put in an SMT inside of that hourly gap, which is a key level. So from here is pretty much okay. We had a London reversal. I'm going to go ahead and expect a New York to be a continuation of that reversal. So as again, we had very clear draws on liquidity, the Asia high, and then also these highs above, and then finally those relative equal highs that were lined up with the 4-hour gap. So what do we have on the bearish side? There's really no clear targets, really nothing for us to target. So on the opposing side, the bullish side, we have very clear draws on liquidity to the upside. So with that being said, let me go ahead and just take off the new week opening gap so the chart is a little bit more cleaner. So coming into market open, let me see. All right, cool. So coming to market open, you'll go ahead and see that, we immediately just kind of displace up, breaking structure. So that SMT ended up causing price to, start distributing to the upside. And this is where a lot of people got caught up, they basically just got chopped up trying to short here. We pretty much took out the Asia high on the S&P 500. However, though, NASDAQ did not do it, and we had an SMT. So I know a lot of people ended up getting chopped up here because of the bearish news and the bearish bias because of that news. So there's a lot of people that are actually trying to short here off that Asia high. But for me, the way I looked at it, again, we have to fill in the rest of this gap, and then we also have way more clear draws above us, and then also just immediately off this bullish ass open, you can see we immediately just displace up, breaking structure. We invalidate a bunch of bearish PD arrays, and overall, the market is just very bullish. It's just pushing up higher and higher without, really any sorts of retracements. So for me, I did not take a trade in the AM. So if I go ahead and just mark out this 15-minute fair value gap here, give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and just fast forward this to 10 a.m. So we see we end up violating that hourly gap on both of the assets. So I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of that there. We end up taking out the Asia high, and we have this unfilled 15-minute below us. So right here is where, I was going to go ahead and look for a trade. I believe eventually we did end up coming into it, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was like right here. Was it? Did we tap it? No. Wait. Okay. It actually did get tapped into. So we actually ended up making this 15 gap. We ended up tapping into it right here. However, though, I simply just did not like this IFUG setup right here, just for the simple fact that this candle, this up close candle right here at 10:01, had a devil's mark, meaning pretty much it had no bottom wick, meaning it had no manipulation. So for me, I know some people entered on here, but even then, had I entered, I would have gotten break even because I would have entered at market. Stop would have been right there at the low. I would have at least been targeting a 2 to 1, which would have been like up there. So, had I entered here at market, as you can see, we came up, I would have gotten at least broken even. So, I ended up fading the setup. I did not take it because I didn't like how we had a devil's mark below there. Although this trade did have an SMT right there at that 15, I don't believe ES ever came into it. Yeah, so we actually ended up having an SMT with ES right there. ES never came into it. NASDAQ was the asset that took it. And then, of course, we had a, PB Mech model to the upside with the inversion. I, however, just didn't like, the fact that we didn't have this here. So I just didn't take it. So from there, the rest of the morning, I didn't get any setups. Right here, we pretty much just like kind of like just very boring price action, just back and forth, just within the range. So right here at around 11, I decided, just go ahead and call it, wait for PM, see if PM wanted to present anything. So let me go ahead and just fast forward this. New 4-hour candle. Okay, it's 2. So coming into PM, let's see, it's right here. All right. I think I have to go back a little bit. Yeah, I might have to go back a little bit. Okay. So coming into the PM session, we see that displacement ends up continuing even further. So that 15 ends up holding. We, are just displacing and, heading closer and closer to our drawn liquidity. So, what's the golden rule? Don't fade the trend. The trend is your friend. So right here, I'm seeing, we're taking out highs. We're approaching my drawn liquidity. My idea, my narrative bias is clearly correct. So why am I going to go ahead and fade that trying to short, especially when we're putting in, creating new imbalances. So right here, we have the 1 hour delivers, I mean the 1 hour. We have the 15-hour delivers, 15-minute we came into. It barely gets respected by, barely gets disrespected by like a few ticks, but it ends up delivering. Why did we disrespect it? Because we actually ended up forming an hourly gap and a premium that ended up delivering price instead. So we also formed this 1 hour here that was more discounted, but that was actually left here as a breakaway gap. So coming to 2 p.m., I was looking to trade the 2 p.m. 4-hour candle, because that's in case for those that don't know, the 2 p.m. is the key time, as it's start of the new 4-hour candle. So we end up forming this 1 hour gap that we end up coming into, and as you can see, we end up sweeping that hourly low right here as well. So we end up sweeping that hourly low. Go ahead and just mark that out. So we sweep that hourly low. So 2 p.m. opens lower, sweeping out that hourly low into an hourly fair value gap that broke structure, and we have a clear drawn liquidity to the upside, which is a relative equal highs that are just slightly below the unfilled 4-hour above us. When that happened, after a sweep of buy side here, we then came down into that hourly, swept out the hourly low into the hourly fair value gap, and right here, give me going to 5 minutes. Right here, we sweep out the hourly low. Right here, we sweep out more sell side prior to that. And with this close right here, we put in a 5-minute change in the state of delivery, for the simple fact that this down close candle was the last candle that swept this low right here. So this right here was our change in state. And I didn't enter off the CISD right there. I pretty much scaled onto the I pretty much scaled onto the 1 minute, since I am trading the PB Mech model. So right here on the 1 minute, I go ahead and check to see what it is that we did. Or was it? So right here, we also had a little 1 minute SMT. So right here, we had SMT inside the hourly. Over here with ES, we had SMT with the hourly. We swept out sell side. We then displaced up 5-minute change in state out of that hourly, confirming the time frame alignment. We also had a 1 minute change in state as well. And then we also had this 1 minute inversion. So we had pretty much most of our confluences here. So as soon as we inverted the highest time frame inversion, if you go ahead and see here, we don't have a 4-minute, we don't have a 5-minute, and it's a great time for trading between to start lagging. So as you can see here, let me go to the 5-minute. So you can see here, we don't have a 5-minute, don't have a 4-minute, we don't have a 3-minute, we don't have a 2-minute. However, though, the highest time frame inversion is a 1-minute. So as soon as we inverted this gap, went ahead and set a limit here. On the 1-minute IFEG, and as you can see, we end up getting tapped in, and we immediately go to take profit without any sort of drawdown. However, though, as soon as we end up displacing past the 2-to-1, I try to price weigh. In case you guys don't know what price weighing is, pretty much where you pretty much just drag the stop with each new candle that prints, trying to secure more money towards the ultimate draw. So right here, I pretty much ended up taking put my stop right here at a 2-to-1, trying to secure more profits. Ended up getting wicked into that actually, and then from there, it ultimately goes to our 4-hour draw on liquidity above. Should happen, yeah, right there. So right there, we ultimately ended up hitting our draw on liquidity with very little to no drawdown. And yeah, so that's pretty much how I made $1,000 on my eval for today, trading the PB Mech model. But yeah, so I was gonna go ahead and wrap up this video. If you liked it, make sure you leave a like, comment, and most definitely subscribe if you want to go ahead and support me. It's greatly appreciated. If you guys want to see me live trade every single morning, I do so on TikTok at BefCito. So yeah, what else was I gonna say? Oh yeah, if you blew an account today, if you blew an account last night as well, trying to gamble on the news, code BEV Alpha Futures 10% off. Unfortunately, the 20% off sale has ended. So I was gonna go ahead and wrap up this video. Hope you all have a great night, day, morning, whatever time it may be for you.